You are 14 years old and your hands are already bleeding from the rope that binds them to the ox cart. The rough hemp cuts into your wrists with each jolt of the wooden wheels against the cobblestones, but you dare not cry out. Your father sold you for 3 silver coins and a promise that you would learn an honest trade. The merchant who bought your indenture papers sits beside the carter, his leather purse heavy with the coins of other desperate families who have traded their sons for survival. The city of Bruges rises before you like a mountain of stone and timber, its guild halls reaching toward heaven with their painted facades and iron-bound doors. Smoke pours from 100 chimneys, carrying the scents of bread, metal, and human waste. The streets teem with people whose clothes mark their stations as clearly as brands mark cattle. Apprentices in rough brown tunics scurry between workshops, carrying bundles twice their size. Journeymen in blue caps stride purposefully toward the market square. Masters in their fur-trimmed robes survey their domains from workshop doorways, like feudal lords inspecting their fiefdoms. Your destination is the workshop of Master Heinrich the goldsmith, a man whose reputation for fine work is matched only by his cruelty toward those who serve him. The building squats against the cathedral square like a toad made of stone, its narrow windows revealing glimpses of firelight and shadow within. Above the door hangs the guild sign, a golden hammer crossed with tongs, worn smooth by decades of weather and marking this place as sanctioned by the ancient brotherhood of metalworkers. Master Heinrich emerges as the cart stops, and you understand immediately why other apprentices cross themselves when speaking his name. He is a mountain of a man, his leather apron stained with the evidence of his trade, his hands scarred from years of working hot metal, his eyes, pale as winter ice, assess you with the calculating gaze of a man who has broken many young spirits and feels no more remorse about it than a farmer feels when slaughtering a pig. So this is the new meat, he growls, his voice like grinding millstones. Weak-looking thing. We'll see if there's any steel in those bird bones. He tosses a leather pouch to the merchant without looking away from you. Cut him loose. If he runs, the city guard will bring him back missing a hand. The workshop is a cavern of controlled chaos. 3 great forges burn along the far wall, their fires casting dancing shadows on the soot-blackened ceiling beams. Workbenches crowd the space between, covered with the tools of the goldsmith's art, hammers of every size, tongs and files, sheets of precious metal waiting to be transformed. The air shimmers with heat and resonates with the constant percussion of metal on metal. To other apprentices work at the benches, their movements precise despite their obvious exhaustion. The older boy, perhaps 16, looks up as you enter, and you see in his eyes a wariness that speaks of hard-won survival. The younger apprentice, close to your own age, keeps his head down, but you notice the fresh welts across his knuckles. This is Thomas, Master Heinrich says, indicating the older boy, and that wretch is Willem. They'll teach you the basics if they know what's good for them. Your first lesson starts now. He selects a hammer from the bench, its head worn smooth by countless hours of use. Hold out your hand. You hesitate, confusion mixing with growing fear. Thomas steps forward quickly. Master, perhaps, did I ask for your counsel, dog? Heinrich's voice cracks like a whip. Thomas immediately retreats, his face pale. The boy needs to understand the weight of the hammer before he can learn to use it. Hand, boy, now. With trembling fingers, you extend your right hand palm up. Heinrich places the hammer's handle across your palm, then wraps your fingers around it. The weight is surprising, heavier than you expected, and your arm immediately begins to ache from holding it steady. You will stand here, Heinrich commands, and hold this hammer until I tell you to put it down. Do not let it fall. Do not change hands. Do not rest it against anything. This is your first lesson in discipline, and discipline is the foundation of all craft. Hours pass. Your arm screams with pain, then goes numb, then screams again. Sweat drips from your forehead onto the workshop floor. The other apprentices work around you, occasionally glancing your way with expressions that mix sympathy with relief that they are not in your position. Master Heinrich disappears into the back rooms periodically, but always returns to check that you remain in position. As the cathedral bells toll the 6th hour after noon, your strength finally fails. The hammer slips from your nerveless fingers and clatters to the floor. The sound echoes through the workshop like a death knell. Heinrich appears as if summoned by the noise. So, for hours, pathetic, but not the worst I've seen. He retrieves the hammer and examines it as if checking for damage. Willem lasted only 2 hours his first day. Thomas managed 5, which is why he's still here, and the boy before him is not. You want to ask what happened to the previous apprentice, but something in Heinrich's tone warns you against showing such curiosity. Instead, you stand silent, cradling your throbbing arm against your chest. Your sleeping place is there, Heinrich continues, pointing to a pile of straw in the corner near the cold forge. You'll wake before dawn to tend the fires. Thomas will show you how to prepare the metal for the day's work. Willem will teach you to clean the tools properly, and every day you will hold the hammer a little longer until your arms are strong enough to actually use it. That night, lying on the straw that serves as your bed, you listen to the sounds of the city settling into darkness. Through the thin walls come the voices of Master Heinrich and his wife, their words muffled but their tones suggesting the comfortable conversation of people discussing their day's business. From the street outside come the footsteps of the night watch, the occasional shout of a drunk, the distant howl of dogs. Thomas appears beside your makeshift bed, moving quietly to avoid attracting attention from the master's quarters. In his hands he carries a small piece of bread and a wooden cup of water. Eat slowly, he whispers, settling beside you on the straw. Your stomach isn't used to real hunger yet. Too much to fast and you'll lose it all. You accept the food gratefully, though your pride chafes at accepting charity. Why are you helping me? Because someone helped me when I first arrived, Thomas replies simply. And because we survive better when we work together. Though the masters don't want us to learn that lesson, over the following weeks, Thomas becomes your guide to the intricate world of the goldsmith's workshop. He teaches you to read the color of heated metal, to know when iron reaches the perfect temperature for shaping. He shows you how to maintain the bellows that feed the forges, how to prepare the charcoal to burn clean and hot, how to mix the various compounds that aid in different metallurgical processes. More importantly, he teaches you the unwritten rules of apprentice survival. Never look directly at Master Heinrich when he's angry. Always check your tools twice before beginning work, because a dull chisel or poorly maintained file will earn you a beating. Learn to anticipate what the master needs before he asks for it, because anticipation suggests intelligence, while waiting for orders suggests laziness. The masters want us broken. Thomas explains one evening as you practice basic hammering techniques on scraps of copper. Not completely broken, because then we'd be useless, but broken enough that we never question, never resist, never imagine that we might deserve better treatment. Willem, the younger apprentice, proves less helpful. His spirit has been thoroughly crushed by months under Heinrich's harsh tutelage, and he views every new rival as potential competition for the master's limited tolerance. He reports small infractions to Heinrich, hoping to earn favor through betrayal. He hoards food and tools, paranoid that sharing might somehow diminish his own meager position. Ignore him, Thomas advises after Willem reports you for allegedly wasting metal on a practice piece. He thinks if he can make the master hate us more, he'll be safer. He doesn't understand that Heinrich needs no reasons to be cruel, only opportunities. The daily routine grinds on with mechanical precision. Wake before dawn to prepare the forges. Spend the morning hours learning basic techniques under Thomas's patient instruction. Endure the afternoon sessions with Master Heinrich, where even the smallest mistake results in sharp blows from his heavy hands. Clean the workshop and prepare for the next day's work as evening falls. Collapse onto your straw bed too exhausted to do anything but plan how to survive tomorrow. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to develop real skills. Your hands learn the weight and balance of different tools. Your eyes start to distinguish between the subtle variations in metal color that indicate different temperatures. Your muscles adapt to the constant strain of hammering, filing, and shaping resistant materials. Master Heinrich notices your progress with characteristic cruelty. The boy shows some promise. He announces one morning to a visiting merchant. Give him another year, and he might be capable of simple work. Of course, His indenture contract runs 7 years, so I'll have plenty of time to train the weakness out of him. 7 years, the number hits you like a physical blow. You had known the term of your service was long, but hearing it spoken aloud makes the reality inescapable. 7 years of this daily grinding. 7 years of being treated as property rather than person. 7 years before you can even hope to achieve the status of journeyman and begin earning real wages. Thomas sees the despair in your face and draws you aside during the brief break allowed for the midday meal. Don't think about the 7 years, he counsels. Think about today. Think about this week. Think about what you can learn and how you can grow stronger. The years will pass whether you let them defeat you or not. His advice proves wise as autumn turns to winter and the workshop takes on a different rhythm. The shorter days mean working more by firelight, the dancing shadows making precise work even more challenging. The cold seeps through the stone walls despite the heat from the forges, and your sleeping corner becomes a test of endurance as much as rest. It is during this harsh season that you first encounter the underground network that Thomas only hinted at in his earlier warnings. A new apprentice arrives, a boy named Marcus whose master has died suddenly, leaving him without legal protection. According to guild law, Marcus should be transferred to another master within the same trade, but the paperwork has been delayed, leaving him in a dangerous legal limbo. Masterless apprentices have no rights. Thomas explains quietly as the three of you share a meager supper of bread and thin soup. They can be pressed into service by anyone, worked without regard for guild regulations, even sold to other cities, if someone wants to be rid of them. But Marcus does not disappear into legal slavery as guild law would suggest. Instead, he vanishes entirely from the official records while somehow continuing to appear in the workshop district, moving between different trades and learning skills that no single master would ever teach. You begin to notice other boys like him, apprentices who seem to belong everywhere and nowhere, who know more about the various crafts than their supposed status would suggest. There are more of us than they want to admit. Thomas reveals one night when Master Heinrich has gone to a guild meeting. Boys who've completed their terms, but been denied journeyman status on technicalities, apprentices whose masters died or went bankrupt, even some who simply couldn't endure their contracts and chose to risk the streets rather than serve out their terms. This shadow community operates according to different rules than the official guild structure. They share skills freely between trades, teach techniques that masters guard jealously, and most importantly, they support each other in ways that the competitive guild system actively discourages. When one of their number is sick or injured, others cover his work. When someone discovers a new technique or method, the knowledge spreads quickly through their network. You begin to understand that your education involves more than just learning to work gold and silver. Thomas is teaching you to read the complex social signals that govern apprentice relationships. Marcus, during his brief appearances, demonstrates techniques from other trades that broaden your understanding of metalwork beyond Heinrich's narrow specialty. Even Willem, in his paranoid observations, reveals information about guild politics and master relationships that proves valuable. The harsh winter tests everyone in the workshop. Food becomes scarce as merchant caravans struggle through snow-blocked roads. Fuel for the forges grows expensive, forcing Heinrich to ration coal and charcoal more strictly. The cold makes metal harder to work, requiring greater strength and skill to achieve the same results. But it is during this difficult season that you experience your first real success as a craftsman. Heinrich assigns you to create a simple silver ring, a test piece to determine whether your skills have progressed enough to justify the cost of precious metal. For 3 days you work on the project, melting and reshaping the silver multiple times as you struggle to achieve the smooth, even curve that Heinrich demands. When you finally present the completed ring, Heinrich examines it with his usual critical eye, turning it slowly in the firelight to check for flaws. For long moments he says nothing, and you brace yourself for the criticism and possible beating that typically follow your efforts. Acceptable, he finally pronounces, and though the word is grudging, you recognize it as the highest praise he has ever given your work. You may proceed to the next level of instruction. Thomas grins at you from across the workshop, his pleasure in your achievement genuine despite the competitive pressure that typically pits apprentices against each other. Even Willem looks up from his own work with something approaching respect. You have passed an important threshold, proven that you possess the basic competence necessary to justify your place in the workshop. The advancement brings new responsibilities and new dangers. Heinrich begins teaching you to work with gold, a metal whose value makes every mistake costly. The techniques required are more subtle than those used for silver or copper, demanding greater precision and control. The margin for error shrinks dramatically, when a single mistake might waste metal worth a month's wages for a common laborer. But the new privileges also grant you access to parts of the workshop previously forbidden. You learn about the hidden compartments where Heinrich stores his most valuable materials and finished pieces. You discover the secret techniques he uses to achieve the distinctive finishes that make his work recognizable to knowledgeable buyers. Most importantly, you begin to understand the business relationships that drive the workshop's operations. Heinrich's customers represent every level of society, from merchant wives seeking simple ornaments to noble families commissioning elaborate, ceremonial pieces. Each class of customer brings different expectations and different payment schedules. The merchants pay promptly but demand lower prices. The nobles pay generously but often months or years late, forcing Heinrich to manage complex credit arrangements. You also learn about the guild's internal politics, the careful balance of cooperation and competition that keeps the system functioning. Master craftsmen share certain basic techniques to maintain overall quality standards, but jealously guard innovations that might provide competitive advantages. Guild meetings serve as much to exchange gossip and form alliances as to conduct official business. Never trust what a master tells you about guild law. Thomas warns one evening as you practice engraving techniques on practice plates. They interpret the rules to suit their needs, and apprentices have no voice in the interpretation. What matters is not what the law says, but what the masters can get away with. This lesson proves prophetic when spring arrives and brings with it a crisis that tests every relationship in the workshop. A commission from a wealthy merchant family goes badly wrong when Heinrich's attempt to create a complex ceremonial cup results in a flawed casting that cannot be repaired. The loss of the expensive gold used in the failed piece, combined with the need to refund the customer's deposit, threatens to bankrupt the workshop. Heinrich's response is swift and predictable. He increases the apprentice's workload while decreasing their already meager food allowances. What had been 12-hour workdays become 14-hour marathons of labor, interrupted only by brief periods for rest. The single meal per day that had sustained you through the winter becomes half a meal, leaving all three apprentices constantly hungry and increasingly weak. Willem breaks first under the increased pressure. Already fragile from months of mistreatment, he begins making small errors that compound into larger problems. Heinrich's response is brutal and immediate. Beatings become daily occurrences. Food is withheld entirely for perceived infractions, and Willem is forced to sleep outside in the workshop yard regardless of weather. Thomas and you watch helplessly as Willem deteriorates from a functioning apprentice into a broken shadow of a boy. His skills, never strong to begin with, desert him entirely under the pressure. His attempts to curry favor with Heinrich by reporting on his fellow apprentices become more desperate and less coherent. Within weeks, he has become a liability rather than an asset. The end comes suddenly. Willem, weakened by hunger and exhaustion, faints while working at one of the forges. He falls forward into the fire, his clothes catching flame before Thomas can pull him clear. The burns he suffers are severe, covering his arms and chest with angry red wounds that quickly become infected in the workshop's unsanitary conditions. Heinrich's calculation is cold and practical. Medical treatment would cost more than Willem's remaining indenture is worth, and an apprentice too injured to work effectively has no value to the workshop. Willem is expelled from his contract and left to fend for himself on the streets of Bruges, where an injured boy without family or resources faces only slow starvation or quicker death. This is what happens to the weak, Heinrich announces to you and Thomas as Willem's pathetic figure disappears into the maze of city streets. Let it be a lesson to you both. The guild rewards strength and punishes weakness. Those who cannot adapt deserve whatever fate befalls them. But Thomas has a different interpretation of Willem's destruction. That night, as you both work to complete the tasks that would normally be shared among 3 apprentices, he speaks quietly about the real lessons of Willem's fate. Heinrich didn't break Willem because he was weak, Thomas says, his voice carefully controlled to avoid carrying to the master's quarters. He broke Willem because Willem allowed himself to be isolated, to compete with us instead of working with us. If we had found ways to help him, to share the burden and cover his mistakes, he might have survived. The insight proves crucial as Heinrich acquires a new apprentice to replace Willem. The boy, named Peter, arrives with even less preparation than you had possessed. His family has sold him to escape debts incurred during a failed harvest, and he knows nothing about metalwork beyond the crude skills needed for farm implements. Heinrich's treatment of Peter follows the same pattern he used with you, but intensified by the financial pressures facing the workshop. The hammer exercise extends for 6 hours on the first day, 8 on the second. The food allowances are cut even further, forcing all 3 remaining apprentices to subsist on portions that would barely sustain 2. But this time, you and Thomas are prepared to intervene. Working within the strict limitations imposed by Heinrich's surveillance, you begin teaching Peter the survival skills that Thomas had shared with you. Small pieces of bread smuggled from your own meager portions help sustain him through the worst hunger. Whispered instructions during brief rest periods help him avoid the most obvious mistakes that would provoke Heinrich's wrath. More importantly, you begin implementing a system of mutual support that distributes the most dangerous and difficult tasks among all 3 apprentices. When Peter's inexperience threatens to ruin a piece of work, Thomas or you find ways to intervene without making the assistance obvious. When your own fatigue makes precision work impossible, the others cover for your mistakes until you can recover. The collaboration requires careful coordination and constant vigilance. Heinrich must never suspect that the apprentices are working together rather than competing against each other. Every act of mutual aid must be disguised as coincidence or individual initiative. The slightest evidence of organized cooperation would result in punishment severe enough to destroy all 3 of you. But the system works. Peter's progress accelerates beyond what Heinrich expects, reducing the frequency and severity of his beatings. The workshop's productivity improves despite the reduced food rations, as mistakes become less common and the quality of completed work increases. Most importantly, the apprentices develop a sense of shared purpose that makes their individual suffering more bearable. The success of this cooperation does not go entirely unnoticed. Other apprentices in nearby workshops begin asking subtle questions about techniques and methods. Masters comment on the improved performance of Heinrich's apprentices, while remaining unaware of the underlying causes. The shadow network that Thomas had introduced you to begins taking a more active interest in developments within your workshop. Summer brings new challenges and opportunities. The increased daylight allows for longer working hours, but also provides more opportunities for discreet communication between workshops. Merchant traffic increases, bringing new customers and new demands for specialized work. Most importantly, the annual Guild Festival approaches, an event that will determine advancement opportunities for journeymen and exceptional apprentices. Heinrich announces his intention to enter several pieces in the festival competition, work that will showcase the workshop's capabilities to potential customers and rival masters. The pressure to excel intensifies the already demanding work schedule, but also offers the first opportunity any of you have had to work on pieces worthy of public display. Thomas is assigned to create a silver chalice for the religious category, work that draws on his years of experience and natural artistic ability. You are given responsibility for a gold bracelet in the jewelry category, a piece that will test your developing skills with precious metals and fine detail work. Peter, despite his recent rival, is included in the effort by being assigned preparation and finishing work that, while not featured in the judging, is essential to the overall quality of the submissions. The months of preparation become a master class in advanced techniques that Heinrich has never bothered to teach. During routine instruction, working to competition standards requires precision and refinement far beyond what is needed. For ordinary commercial pieces, every tool must be perfectly maintained, every technique executed with absolute accuracy, every design element balanced and harmonious. But the intensive instruction also reveals the vast gap between what Heinrich knows and what he teaches his apprentices. Techniques that he employs routinely in his own work have never been shared with his students, not from any desire to maintain quality standards, but simply because he views apprentices as temporary workers rather than future craftsmen worthy of complete training. Thomas, working on his chalice, discovers advanced silver working techniques by observing Heinrich's demonstrations and then experimenting in secret during rest periods. You learn about gold alloys and heat treatment through careful observation and clandestine practice. Peter, supposedly limited to preparation work, absorbs knowledge about design principles and finishing methods that will serve him well in future projects. The collaboration between apprentices reaches new levels of sophistication during this period. Each boy specializes in different aspects of the work, but all contribute to every project. Thomas's artistic sense guides design decisions across all three submissions. Your developing expertise with precious metals ensures consistent quality in the most expensive components. Peter's fresh perspective often identifies problems that more experienced eyes miss. Heinrich remains unaware of this cooperation, seeing only that his apprentices are producing work of exceptional quality under his guidance. His pride in the anticipated competition results blinds him to the complex support system that actually enables their success. He begins making grand promises about the recognition and advancement that victory will bring, though you note carefully that all his promises concern benefits to himself rather than rewards for his apprentices. The festival itself proves to be a revelation. For the first time since your arrival in Bruges, you see beyond the narrow confines of Heinrich's workshop to witness the full scope of guild activities. Master craftsmen from throughout the region display their finest work in elaborate pavilions that transform the central market square into a showcase of human artistry and skill. The diversity of techniques and styles overwhelms your senses after months of exposure only to Heinrich's methods. Goldsmiths from other workshops demonstrate approaches to metalworking that you had never imagined. Silversmiths create pieces whose complexity and beauty make your own efforts seem primitive. By comparison, even more exotic crafts like jewel cutting and enamel work reveal possibilities that expand your understanding of what skilled hands can accomplish. But the festival also reveals the harsh realities of guild competition. Masters circle each other's displays like wolves, seeking weaknesses to exploit and advantages to claim. Apprentices and journeymen are displayed alongside their work like prized possessions, their skills evaluated as coldly as the objects they have created. The ceremonies of advancement and recognition mask calculations of profit and political advantage that determine who rises and who remains trapped in servitude. Thomas's chalice wins second place in the religious category, a triumph that brings Heinrich considerable recognition among his peers. Your bracelet earns honorable mention in the jewelry competition, a result that Heinrich claims as evidence of his superior teaching methods. Peter's contribution goes unrecognized officially, but the quality of the finishing work draws comment from several master judges. Heinrich's reaction to the success proves characteristically selfish. The recognition he receives leads to new commissions and improved social standing within the guild, but none of these benefits extend to his apprentices. If anything, success makes him more demanding, as he seeks to build on his reputation by producing even more impressive work. For future competitions, the increased expectations translate into longer hours, more complex projects, and punishment for any perceived decline in quality. Heinrich begins accepting commissions beyond the workshop's capacity, forcing the apprentices to work through the night to meet impossible deadlines. The collaborative system that enabled your earlier success comes under severe strain, as exhaustion reduces everyone's effectiveness. It is during this period of maximum stress that you first encounter representatives of the journeyman's movement, a loosely organized effort to reform guild practices and improve conditions for workers below the master level. Unlike the shadow network of apprentices that Thomas had shown you, the journeymen operate with semi-official status, using their recognized position within the guild hierarchy to advocate for change through legitimate channels. Their leader, a goldsmith named Master Franz, who had risen from apprentice to master through exceptional skill, rather than family connections, visits Heinrich's workshop under the pretext of examining competition pieces, but his real purpose becomes clear when he arranges to speak privately with each apprentice, ostensibly to evaluate your potential for future employment in his own expanding workshop. The guild system serves masters well, Franz explains during your conversation, speaking quietly but openly about topics that would bring severe punishment if Heinrich overheard. But it treats apprentices and journeymen as disposable resources, rather than valuable workers deserving of fair treatment. This must change if the crafts are to continue attracting talented young people. Franz's workshop, he explains, operates according to different principles than most guild establishments. Apprentices receive adequate food and housing, reasonable working hours, and comprehensive training that prepares them for genuine advancement. Journeymen earn fair wages and participate in decision-making about workshop operations. Most radically, the traditional barriers between different levels of the hierarchy are reduced, allowing for collaboration and knowledge sharing that benefits everyone. The model Franz describes sounds impossibly idealistic after your experience with Heinrich's harsh methods, but he offers concrete evidence of its success. His workshop has won more competition awards than any other goldsmith operation in the region. His apprentices advance to journeyman status at higher rates, and with better skills than those from traditional workshops. Most importantly, his former apprentices speak of their experiences with gratitude rather than the bitter resentment that characterizes most survivors of the guild system. But implementing such reforms requires more than individual masters choosing to treat their workers better. The guild structure itself, with its emphasis on maintaining traditional hierarchies and preventing change that might threaten established interests, actively resists innovation. Masters who treat apprentices to well face criticism from their peers for setting dangerous precedents. Apprentices who demand better treatment risk being branded as troublemakers and blacklisted from future employment. Franz and his allies have therefore developed a strategy that works within existing guild rules, while gradually expanding the rights and protections available to non-masters. They lobby for stricter enforcement of existing regulations about apprentice treatment. They create new categories of advancement that provide intermediate steps between apprentice and journeyman status. Most importantly, they document abuses and build cases for reforms based on practical benefits to workshop productivity and guild reputation. Thomas immediately grasps the potential significance of Franz's movement, recognizing it as the systematic approach to change that the informal apprentice networks had been groping toward. You find yourself torn between hope for improvement and skepticism based on your experience of how entrenched interests resist even modest reforms. Peter, still struggling with basic survival, shows little interest in theoretical discussions about guild reform. But the conversation with Franz plants seeds that grow quickly in the harsh soil of Heinrich's continued abuses. As autumn arrives and competition season ends, Heinrich's treatment of his apprentices returns to its previous harshness, intensified by his determination to maintain the reputation he has newly acquired. The collaboration that had enabled your success becomes more difficult to maintain as Heinrich increases his surveillance and reduces the time available for rest and recovery. The breaking point comes when Heinrich announces his intention to sell Peter's indenture to another master, a decision motivated purely by his desire to acquire a more experienced apprentice for upcoming projects. Under guild law, apprentices have no voice in such transfers, which can occur at any time for any reason deemed sufficient by their masters. Peter's terror at the prospect of transfer is understandable. His new master, Heinrich explains with obvious satisfaction, is known for his innovative disciplinary methods and his ability to extract maximum productivity from even the most reluctant workers. The workshop he will join specializes in mass production of simple items, offering little opportunity for skill development. but providing steady profits through brutal efficiency. Thomas and you face an agonizing decision. Accepting Peter's transfer maintains your own relative security, but condemns a fellow apprentice to almost certain destruction. Attempting to intervene risks exposing your collaborative relationship and inviting punishment. That could end your own apprenticeships, the individual survival strategy that had sustained you both before meeting. Peter argues for silence and self-preservation, but the months of working together have created bonds that transcend mere self-interest. Peter's success has depended on your support, just as your own advancement has been enabled by his contributions and Thomas's guidance. The collaborative approach has revealed possibilities for mutual aid that challenge the guild system's emphasis on individual competition and hierarchical submission. The solution, when it comes, draws on every contact and resource the three of you have developed during your time in the workshop. Thomas reaches out to his connections in the shadow network of masterless apprentices. You make contact with Franz's reform movement through channels established during his earlier visit. Peter, despite his fear, agrees to play his part in a plan that will require courage from all participants. The strategy is complex and dangerous, requiring precise timing and absolute secrecy. Franz's organization will file a formal complaint about Heinrich's violation of guild regulations regarding apprentice transfers, citing specific procedures that must be followed before such decisions can be implemented. The shadow network will provide sanctuary for Peter if the legal challenge fails, and he needs to disappear from official records. You and Thomas will continue working within the workshop to maintain appearances, while gathering evidence to support the various challenges. To Heinrich's authority, the plan succeeds beyond your most optimistic expectations, but not in the way any of you anticipated. Franz's investigation into Heinrich's practices uncovers financial irregularities that threaten his guild membership. Heinrich's recent success has led him to take risks with customer deposits and guild fees that violate fundamental regulations governing workshop operations. When these violations become public, Heinrich faces expulsion from the guild and possible criminal prosecution. The collapse of Heinrich's authority creates opportunities and dangers in equal measure. With their master's position in question, his apprentices find themselves in legal limbo, neither protected by valid indentures nor free to seek other employment. Some guild masters see this as an opportunity to acquire trained workers at bargain prices. Others view masterless apprentices as potential sources of trouble and avoid involvement entirely.